what is the future of hub airports around the world. Now, first of all, can I ask, is there anybody here, could you just put your hands up if there's anybody here from outside the UK, and by that I mean living outside the UK? That's good. Maybe some of you have got particular perspectives from your countries about aviation and global development. We're currently in a phase here in the UK of having a big piece of analysis undertaken by a commission, an independent commission which has been set up by the government called the Davies Commission. It's looking into airport capacity, particularly here in the southeast of England. We have a very constrained hub gateway airport, Heathrow Airport, and the Commission's job is to look at the role of aviation in the future of the UK economy, and particularly as far as concerns hub airports. It's a very important piece of work, considering the role of aviation today. That's something we'll be exploring in our discussion today. It's a very sensitive subject. It's a subject which probably almost every facet of society has got a view on, and many of those views are deeply held. Many hold a greater or lesser percent of truth, but it's the Commission's job to, in a non-political way, come up with preliminary recommendations before the end of this year, and in 2015, which is after we will have had our next election here in the UK, to give their findings. But the central issue is about access to the UK and hub airports. We have one hub airport currently, London Heathrow, and I would now like to welcome to the stage the Chief Executive of that airport, Colin Matthews, who is here to talk to us more about the subject. Colin, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Welcome to the WTM. Well, I suppose we could be a couple of pilots sitting here with our mics on, feeling very self-conscious.
Exactly, yes.
You feel like you want to throw it off somehow, but let's try to imagine they're not there. Well, I summed up there, Colin, what the role of the Commission is. Do you want to add anything to that? Because you're very involved, you will have spoken to the Commission. What is their work about in a little more detail?
I think it's really important that the Commission brings some facts, some evidence, some analysis to a topic that's quite complicated. And as you said, people have such strong views on them that are so deeply held that the only way to, I think, reconcile those views is with the highest quality analysis. And I think the Commission is doing their work seriously. I'm looking forward to seeing what they conclude in their interim report, which is quite imminent.
Next month, I think, isn't it?
In December.
Yeah.
As well as their final report, which is scheduled to be after the next election in 2015.
Do we know exactly when, or will that depend on the cycle of the election?
2015, after the election, that's all I know.
Right, okay. And in terms of the composition of that commission, it's not politicians, is it, who are actually running the
No,
analysis?
I haven't got a list in front of me, but it's got people who are expert on environmental issues, people who understand airports, people who understand economic issues, social issues, and Sir Howard Davies himself. So it's a broad range of skills. They're an analytic bunch. I think they're doing the work seriously, steadily, and I look forward to seeing the outcome.
There's another senior player in the UK aviation world, Willie Walsh of IAG, and he said that he believes the Commission, as you said, will do a very thorough piece of work, but he's really sceptical that the politicians will then do anything about it. Do you share that scepticism, or are you rather more optimistic?
Well, I think it's a truly difficult political decision to take, because any conclusion is difficult to implement, actually. Doing nothing has really serious consequences, and expanding Heathrow or doing other things will produce really strong opposition as well as support, and therefore, yes, it's going to be a tough decision to take for politicians, but I think that's their job, surely, is to look at the interests of the country, not our airport specifically, not one particular airline, not the airlines as a total, but to look at the overall interest in the UK and how the importance of having the right infrastructure is for us, be that for tourism, be that for trade, other sorts of trade, investment, jobs, and so on.
So basically, aviation, it serves a very important role in the economy of the UK today.
Well, it does, and I think that argument has been largely won. You know, a few years ago, I think people were sort of suggesting aviation is an optional luxury for wealthy holidaymakers, and I don't think that's the view now from any quarter. I think people understand that for an economy to prosper, it needs to have good air links. And the next stage after that is, well, okay, if you need good connections, what specifically do you need to have good long-haul connections? Because making long-haul flights economic is a particular challenge that airlines fulfill through airports like Heathrow.
Okay, well, let's work our way through some of the issues. We have a travel industry audience here, not necessarily a purely aviation audience. We have, I think, some journalists present as well, maybe even some other airport people. And as I questioned at the beginning, some people from outside of the UK. I should say at this point, the audience, you are going to have a chance to chip in, either give an opinion, ask Colin a question. Initially, we'll work through some of the issues to make sure we've got a broad understanding, but we'll definitely come back, and don't feel hesitant to put forward your views. So can you spell out for us, Colin? I mean, you said there about long-haul connections, and we talk about hub airports, and it's easy to forget in the industry that we think everybody knows what a hub airport is. Your airport, Heathrow, I believe, is defined as a hub airport, but what does that mean?
Well, you've got to think, what does an airline do to make a long-haul flight profitable? And the first thing they do is concentrate on the most profitable source of traffic. And the most profitable source of traffic are the traffic that wants to fly direct. So the people who want to start or end in our city, in London in our case. There is a real disadvantage with that category, though. The answer is there are a great deal more of them who want to travel on a Sunday night than there are on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night. So the only way an airline can have an economic route is if the load factors stay high every single day of the week, every month of the year.
And the load factor being the number of seats filled on the flights. Yeah.
It's not economic to fly empty seats. It's not environmentally attractive to fly empty seats. So the whole point is, how do we get as few as possible empty seats day after day? And the mechanism that airlines use to do that is to fill the remaining space with transfer traffic. And transfer traffic has a choice, so you can have more or less by adjusting the price. They have a choice. They can fly through Paris, through Amsterdam or Frankfurt, Madrid, or London. And so what airlines can do at a hub is to fill their aircraft day after day, not just on a Sunday night in October when people want to travel across the Atlantic to do a week's work, or on a holiday week when they want to travel on a Saturday, but midweek as well. And it takes a hub to do that.
Playing devil's advocate, though, Colin, I mean, shouldn't it be a logic of an airline that if they can't fill a plane up with the people getting on at their start point airport and getting off at the other end, doesn't that mean it's questionable whether they should be flying that route at all or just not fly it so often?
Well, that route's going to fly from somewhere. The question for us in the UK is, does it fly from London or does it fly from Paris? And some people would say it really doesn't matter. I say it matters a lot, because if that route flies from London, we're going to have relatively more tourists who choose to base their holiday in London, relatively more outbound tourists who are going to be able to fly direct, which they prefer, to cities in China or South America. So having London be the place that people choose to start and end long-haul journeys, I believe, brings fantastic economic advantages to the UK. And that's the key thing that we want the Howard Davies Commission, the Airports Commission, to really analyse and come up. We've submitted evidence. We think there is good evidence. But we would say that, wouldn't we? So we really want that commission to nail that question, that a hub matters to the UK, not just to the airport, but to the UK.
But there's certainly a school of thought that has said, and you're saying maybe the argument is perhaps understood now, that says, well, does this transfer traffic matter? You've explained about maybe filling up planes more easily on one day of the week versus another, but there certainly is an opinion that, well, these transfer passengers, it's all very well getting them on planes in the UK, but they don't contribute anything to the UK economy, and they cause us to have more planes and more noise, pollution, and so on.
Well, here's what they do. Because they're choosing London, people who live in London or start their journey in London or end it in London can choose from a wider range of destinations, and they can fly more often in the day than if the transfer traffic wasn't here. Why else would it be, by the way, that 80% of the long-haul flights that happen from this country happen from Heathrow? It's not because of the architecture, it's because we're a hub. It's not because we're better than other airports, it's because we're different. The other airports are not set up to handle transfer traffic, and therefore Heathrow can do something that's unique. What the other airports do is important too, and I'm sure the Commission needs to look at that. You know, think of what Ryanair and EasyJet have offered to consumers to travel short haul around Europe, fantastic good prices. Really important sector, and the Commission should look at their needs for capacity, But there's a very specific question which relates to long-haul travel and to a hub and to Heathrow in our case.
Well, we'll come back to the point about UK capacity more broadly and other airports. But again, just to make sure we really have got it clear what hubs are about, you compared Heathrow to Paris. But I mean, how many hub-type airports are there in the world, and what kind of countries and places does one find them?
Well, let's start with Europe. You know, Europe has 27 member states, is it now? But there are only really 5 which have hubs. So it's not the right of every country to have a hub. It's a fantastic privilege and benefit because business happens in London, because we have that connectivity that wouldn't otherwise happen here. So it's not a question of nationality. The fact that you are a country doesn't mean that you have a hub. In Europe, there are 5 big hubs, Frankfurt, Paris, Amsterdam, Madrid, and London, and they are significantly bigger. If you look around the world, actually, there are 6 airports that have more than 50 long-haul destinations. Heathrow, we have around about 90, so we're right up the top of the league table, bringing fantastic advantages to UK business and tourists to be able to get around their world directly, efficiently from here in London. That makes London an efficient place to base your business, to do business. But there are only 6 around the world. We're one of them, and we maintain it's worth hanging on to. And simply to let that role pass to Paris or Holland, by the way, I think if you take Holland, which is a nation that understands really clearly how much it depends on trade, they are really fighting to defend Schiphol, to make sure it keeps that role, because they understand how much trade, jobs comes to Holland because of Schiphol. And I sometimes think, sometimes in the UK, we take it a bit for granted, and we haven't always understood how important those long-haul air connections are to our trading position, our success.
But if there are so few around the world, why is that? I mean, isn't that, again, fuel to the argument to say, well, they're not needed because there's very few of them. You know, most airports are not hubs, and as you said, there's not a divine right for every country to have a hub airport.
No, but if you look at the experience in the United States is over time, which has been an open market internally, the number of hubs has declined over time. The cities that hang on to a hub benefit from that. The ones that lose that hub status suffer. So Chicago has a airport quite analogous to Heathrow, actually similar size, and Chicago really benefits from that connectivity. Other cities in the US who used to be served by a major airline are no longer. Now, airlines have consolidated. So my point is, it's not a right to us here in the UK to have a hub. We could do with none. We could have Paris or Amsterdam do the job for us. But there would be really significant economic consequences from that, which I'm sure the Airports Commission will do a good job of analysing.
Well, you said that Heathrow has 90 or so long-haul routes. Did you say that was the highest in the world?
Not quite. It's up towards the top of the league table, yes.
What's the top? Which airport in the world has the most long-haul routes?
You're stretching me now. Dubai is in those top 6, and I think it would be Frankfurt.
Right, okay. And in that sense, if the UK is already there in even number 1 or top 3, again, do we need to do more? I mean, are we not just happy with that? I mean,
well, the interesting thing is there was an external piece of research recently which said that if we had the capacity, we would probably serve 20, 25 more routes. Then we would definitely be the best connected city on Earth. So that's something we could do. We've got a geography that favors us. If we had the airport capacity, we could take the most advantage of that. So, you know, Heathrow is a serious player. It's one of the biggest, but it could do a better job for this country if it had enough capacity. You know, we turn away airlines. In my few years at Heathrow, different airlines have come and knocking at the door and said, can we fly to Heathrow? We think it'd be really value. And it's, I think, a shame, a really terrible thing to say, well, no, there isn't, unless you can trade a slot from some airline who's got some spare. Why would we turn away airlines from Southeast Asia who want to fly here? This week, very good news, Philippine Airlines has just started up a route. But there are others that would fly to Heathrow if they could.
So are you talking about some of these new emerging markets, I mean, like China, other parts of Asia, where this is a particular relevant issue?
Well, the relevant places would be secondary cities in China. I mean, Wuhan opened up a route to Paris recently. Why wouldn't they come to London? But there wasn't enough room. Countries like Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, developing long-haul connections around the world through Vietnam Airlines, and there wasn't enough room for them in Heathrow, and that's just wrong.
But we've got several airports in the London catchment, and another big one is Gatwick Airport. And again, part of this debate is, can't we better use the capacity we've had? Can these airlines not just, if they come to London, go to one of the other airports, such as Gatwick or Stansted?
Well, there's a huge economic incentive for them to go to other airports, because if they did, they could sell their slots, because slots at London, at Heathrow, are worth a lot.
But what if they haven't? I mean, what if they haven't got slots? What if they're not in London, in Heathrow? Couldn't they just say, well, we want to come to London, we'll go to Gatwick or Stansted?
Well, they don't. You know, look at decades of history. When they leave London, at least 85% of them will end up in Paris or Amsterdam instead. And sometimes Gatwick wins flights, but it's lost 20 in the last 5 years. And that's not because it's a bad airport, it's a great airport. It just cannot, long-haul airlines cannot enjoy such high load factors from an airport which can't feed it with transfer traffic in the way that Heathrow does.
So you're seriously saying airlines may not come into the London market if they can't get into Heathrow?
They don't. Bar UK did that research just a year or a little more ago that specifically asked that question. And there's really clear evidence. There are numbers on the table. That's not opinion. That's the fact. Airlines who can't come to Heathrow end up going to France or Holland instead.
Well, another trend we're seeing in the industry is the emergence of the Gulf carriers, and we haven't really touched on them so far. We have airlines which are becoming really powerhouses, like Emirates, Qatar, Etihad. They serve the UK market. In the case of a couple of them at least, they serve several airports in the UK. But Dubai, the home of Emirates, has just opened a new airport last week. Given that if you're not living in London and you have to travel somewhere around the world, or you're coming from another country to the UK, but you don't, for whatever reason, need to come to London, let's say you want to go to Scotland, does any of this matter? I mean, Emirates is flying from Glasgow, from Manchester, from Newcastle, Birmingham, and indeed two London airports. Isn't that a much better proposition for customers? Isn't that taking the pressure off London? And will that not be really the best way to go forward? Give more opportunities to this type of carrier?
Well, Emirates, to take that example, can and does serve very effectively, for instance, Glasgow. And the reason it can do that is because it's got a hub at the other end of the route. So my argument, you need a hub, is still the case for Emirates, but they have their own one in their own country. An individual passenger will make their choices. And if you want to fly from Glasgow to Australia, then flying via Dubai might be an attractive option. Maybe you can make just one stop instead of two. Individuals will do that. But if you add up the sum total of those individual choices, and if as a result London is a weaker hub, then over time less business is done in London than would be the case otherwise. So there's a consequence for the total economy. Of course, individual travellers will make their own decisions, and it's good that they have the choice. We just want to be able to compete for those passengers so that they can choose Heathrow because they like to come through Heathrow instead of us turning them away because we haven't got the room.
But another counter-argument, we see a lot of focus on rail. We have a government here that is willing to invest in a new rail project to speed up links to the Midlands and later beyond, named HS2. We've seen what Eurostar did to the London-Paris, London-Brussels market very successfully. Indeed, high-speed trains developing in other parts of the world. Couldn't we just take out short-haul flights, domestic and European, from Heathrow and create a lot of space? Then you could fit these long-haul flights in.
Well, bring it on. But imagine a passenger who's starting their journey in Sheffield or Leeds today, and think of their choice. Option one, quick taxi ride to a local airport, short hop to Amsterdam and then fly anywhere in the world, or batter down the M1 in a car to Heathrow. not a great option. We want a high-speed train so that passenger could choose Heathrow instead. Now,
So you'd
not
like
all
a
of them-
train into Heathrow?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. You know, high-speed train will bring more passengers to Heathrow, so it won't solve the capacity crisis. We'd love to be able to liberate a couple of slots to put on more long-haul flights, but there's not nearly enough in there to solve Heathrow's capacity needs, and we would open up Heathrow to the Midlands, because practically speaking, there are several million people taking journeys from the Midlands for whom Heathrow is not a very attractive option today, because it's just not easy to get to Heathrow from the Midlands. So high-speed rail would be great, bring it on.
But if you did have those trains into London, does that not create enough space?
No.
It'll
It'll create
resources long-haul flights.
a few slots, but not nearly enough to address our capacity needs.
Now, there are other changes taking place in the industry. I mean, not least this year, well, a little over a year, I think, we've seen new aircraft coming into service like the A380. That's now, I think, 3 or 4 years, in fact, very large aircraft. You don't need more flights when an airline like Emirates is flying a big plane like that into Heathrow, indeed other airports. Conversely, we have new, very long range but small aircraft like the 787, which has gone into service in the last year, and I think this calendar year to Heathrow. There is a train of thought that talks about hub bypass, that these small aircraft will take away the need to have, again, short-haul flights and connections, because airlines can either downsize their capacity or, taking your argument, that people would rather have an easy journey from wherever they live, which may be a long way from London. They can just fly from their local airport on one of these small aircraft. Is that not going to reduce the imperative for a hub in the future?
Well, there's one key bit of evidence that says no, and that is look at the orders for 787s. If your argument was right, John, then most of the 787s would be being bought by point-to-point airlines. Well, 90% of them are going to network airlines. 90% of them are being bought to serve hub and spoke models. Now, from Heathrow's point of view, a 787 would be a fantastically efficient, attractive platform to launch a new service, say, to a secondary city in China. It'd be great. You know, the day that we can have a flight to Wuhan, that would surely be the aircraft you would use. So yes, there might be some passengers who fly over Heathrow's head instead of stopping, but it'll open up many more markets for us. And in the same way, you know, A380 is a fantastic aircraft for Heathrow because it allows us to use our limited capacity for more passengers. But 380 is a lot of passengers. You've got to bring more transfer passengers to fill a 380 than for a smaller aircraft. So you can't just switch off short haul. In fact, the bigger the aircraft, the more short haul aircraft you need to fill it. So neither the A380 nor the 787 change the network model as a successful model. Yes, they'll make some routes attractive and viable that weren't previously, and that's very good news for us.
And what about another model which is more embryonic? We know a lot about short-haul, low-cost airlines. What about long-haul, low-cost? We just had news a couple of weeks ago that Norwegian, which recently moved into the long-haul market with these aircraft, 787s, they've begun services from Scandinavia to the US and Asia. They will begin services from London next year from Gatwick. People talk about self-connecting, that people are willing to go on short-haul, low-cost airlines, or indeed others, fly to a hub airport, or at least an airport having long-haul flights, and make their own connections, even if airlines are not overtly offering them. Is that also not going to take the pressure valve off a bit and reduce the strength of your belief in this hub model?
Let's see. But, you know, that's not the first flight that's been launched from Gatwick to a long-haul destination. There are other ones that have, over a long history, which have started and then stopped. And yes, there's always someone who is saying we're going to launch a new route. They don't all survive. Let's see what happens to this one. But the other thing, if you look at all of the new aircraft ordered by point-to-point airlines recently, they're short-haul aircraft. You know, the model works for short-haul because if you turn an aircraft around quickly and you don't worry about connections, you get the aircraft flying more hours per day. So EasyJet and Ryanair have aircraft in the air much longer than a network carrier. And that's the model. That's how they provide such fantastically efficient flights for short-haul passengers. It's a great product, fantastic. It's not the market we serve in Heathrow. It is the market for other airports in the UK, and it's an important one. Our model at Heathrow is very specifically long haul, and the hub and spoke model that makes that long haul possible.
Now, we've talked about other airports in London and the regions. If there is a need for a type of hub service, as you're suggesting, and the commission that we talked about, who has a job of assessing this, there are many claims being made that other London airports could do the job, or indeed a combination of London airports, that the UK regions have a role to play. The economic problems of the UK, with much higher unemployment and more sluggish economic conditions, especially away from London, could do with some support to job creation by bringing in more direct flights supporting business. Again, is that surely not a more palatable solution? Use the capacity we've got, spread out the demand around the London area, and indeed, again, using these new aircraft, give the regions a bigger share of voice in the whole air transport activity.
Well, nothing is stopping the airlines doing that today. On the contrary, the bosses of those airports are doing their best to persuade airlines to put on services from other airports across the UK. And, my first job was in the Midlands, and why shouldn't the Midlands have great connections? The economic facts are that our option in the UK to have one hub or to have zero, and we won't end up with multiple hubs. Other countries have tried it. The most dramatic one is Tokyo, who 30 or more years ago, their airport, Haneda, was getting full. And so they opened a second one, said, let's put the domestic in Haneda and the international in Narita. When they did that, Japan was the first hub in Asia. It's not in the first 6 anymore. It's now in number 7. And its great economic rival, South Korea, has taken that crown from it. Actually now, Japan trying to reverse that by saying international flights can go to Haneda, trying to rebuild that model that they once had, absolutely the prime position in Asia. I just don't think the UK should take a 30-year diversion in the same way that Japan did. It would be a mistake, and I hope that the Commission will look at those options seriously, understand them completely. My belief is that our choice is we have one hub or none. We won't have 2. And we won't have a split hub, by the way.
Are there any examples around the world where there are 2 hubs?
Split hubs where you rattle between one and the other on a high speed? Don't think so. No.
Okay, but I mean, looking at Heathrow realistically, I mean, it's an airport that people love to hate. What is the passenger volume? Close to 70 million passengers a year. It is chocker full. We saw in the UK media a couple of weeks ago, there was one day of high winds, and the headlines were Heathrow cancels. Was it 20% more flights than Gatwick? It was a much higher figure, I think, but much more disrupted. We get a couple of snowflakes, the airport grounds to a halt. I mean, is it sustainable to make the argument that Heathrow can be the hub for the future if you can't handle what you've got?
Well, we'd certainly be more resilient if we had adequate capacity. Let me give you the numbers for last Monday. And you say high winds, it was a storm, by the way. It's
Right.
the only time I've ever been in Heathrow where aircraft were, for a brief period of time, not able to land. The wind was so strong. But the forecast told us that we could land 30 aircraft an hour. The schedule said 38 were going to arrive. So what do? We wait for 38 to come and tell 8 of them, sorry, there's not enough room. Or what we did, in fact, 24 hours in advance, with the agreement of airlines, say, we'd be better off if 30 come. If only 30 are going to land, let's make sure those passengers know before they leave their home. And that's what we did, and the day was smooth as a result. But if we're operating at the rate of utilization we are in Heathrow, if anything slows down the rate of landing, high winds or other conditions, then disruption hits us quicker than other airports. So we have to take proactive steps to manage that rather than wait for people to be stuck on the ground. So people were not stuck in Heathrow last Monday. The operational day went smoothly, and the passengers whose journey was changed knew about it before.
I mean, that's all very well, Colin, but I mean, some people, they still had their journeys disrupted, and other airports could point to a feather in their cap that they didn't have to do that, because they had the right capacity, the right approach, and didn't disrupt.
Airports who've got spare capacity You know, if you've got 10 aircraft landing an hour and you've got capacity for 20, you could halve the landing rate and you're still fine. We can't do that at Heathrow, which is why it's so important that we win the argument for additional capacity.
So the additional capacity, I mean, wouldn't it just be better to put an argument and say, well, we accept we can't be the hub for the future in terms of keeping our arguably preeminent position, but let's just have a bit more capacity so we don't have days like last Monday or the classic Heathrow snow day about 3 years ago, or Terminal 5 meltdowns and opening. Wouldn't it be better just to say we'll be pragmatic, we want that much more capacity, but we won't try to go beyond our means after that?
Well, we can't build half a new runway. So if there is a new runway, then certainly on the face of it, that's 50% more capacity. Of course, we would want to use a proportion of that to make sure that the airport is less vulnerable to external shocks, to weather events, and that's something we would clearly do.
I mean, Heathrow, when it was built, it was in the middle of the countryside in the 1940s, and it's certainly not today. There are some small, beautiful villages, within the kind of confines of the airport's general area. There are many very unpleasant things that would have to happen if Heathrow was the one to expand. People's homes would have to be destroyed. There are more people who are going to be subjected to additional noise and pollution. I mean, could you ever address satisfactorily those kind of concerns and arguments and a lot of protests where other airports may be able to say, well, we have greenfield site, or we don't have that population and noise issue?
Well, listen, none of the options are simple, which is why the Commission's work is so important. And we need to look at all of the issues which are important. The social issues, the property issues, the noise issues, and the environmental issues, and the economic issues. And all of them need to be put coolly and calmly into the equation, and a good judgment has to be. We are not an airport authority. We are an airport. We will put our opinions, the data, forward. It's not ultimately up to us to say where the nation's infrastructure should be. We'll make the case as well as we can, but it is really important that the Commission looks at all of those options. And it's no good presenting an option that solves loads of problems but is never going to be built because it's unaffordable. Or it's no good proposing a solution that says, let's spread the hub around, if in fact it's never going to be built and never going to work. It has to be a solution that can balance all of the issues and work. And let me tell you absolutely confidently, none of them are easy, but it's a really important topic.
I mean, even today, Colin, without any growth, I just saw in researching the interview that there's been a scientific study done recently saying that 3.6 million people are 20% higher risk of strokes and heart disease because of living near Heathrow, because of the stresses and strains caused by noise. I mean, you're not surely going to subject more people to that type of health risk.
Well, in total, the impact of noise from Heathrow has been coming down over time and will continue to come down with 2 runways or with 3 runways. That's partly because aircraft are getting quieter. We incentivize that as strongly as we possibly can, by the way. It's partly because we are devising with NATS, quieter operating.
Who are NATS?
National Air Traffic Services, the people who control the airspace, ways of operating aircraft that impose noise on less people on the ground. And in due course, I'm sure, we need to steadily improve the mitigation schemes we have on the ground to offset the effect of noise. But noise is a really important topic. It has to be part of the equation along with the fact of jobs, and along with the fact where people live. Sometimes people say, Colin, Heathrow's fine, but it's in the wrong place. It's too busy. Well, the reason it's busy at Heathrow is because Heathrow is a magnet for economic activity. So that's what a successful airport does. It causes economic activity to happen close by. 2/3 of the headquarters of international businesses that are based in the UK are within 25 miles of Heathrow. And the average postcode of the person starting or ending a journey in London is in Beaconsfield. So imagine all those 70 million people.
Where is Beaconsfield, for people who don't know?
Slightly north and west, about 10 miles
Quite
north
close
and west of Heathrow.
Heathrow.
Well, I took my journey from Heathrow today. It took me 1 car and 4 trains to get here, and 2 hours. Imagine 70 million passengers making those journeys. It's a huge issue to think of moving all of the passengers. Heathrow's in the right place for the passengers. It's in the right place for generating economic activity. Of course, we need to minimize the impact and reduce the impact on people who live close by.
Well, you say it's a magnet for jobs, and there are always headquarters and journeys from fairly close by to the airport. But we have the Mayor of London who is shouting loudly about the value of aviation as he sees it to the UK economy, and expressing strong concern that the country has been left behind. But he pretty well pours cold water on your arguments and says, we'll close Heathrow down. We can create 40,000 jobs anyway. We can build a lovely London borough where we need housing. And he says that he can create 375,000 jobs over to the northeast of London with a brand new airport. Isn't it better now to say, okay, Heathrow's done us proud for 60 years. Look at Dubai building a brand new airport. Look at what they're going to do in China and maybe Istanbul. Let's do the same thing. Let's get into the 21st century, start with a clean sheet of paper, build a new airport, and build the infrastructure. And just before I let you answer, I mean, it's also been pointed out by some people, well, it's all very well Heathrow making the claims for what they could do as an airport, but they're forgetting the infrastructure to get to the airport, the road access, which itself is creaking at the seams.
We are well connected to the M4, the M25, the M3, the M1. We are fantastically well plugged into the UK's infrastructure in general, and to London on Heathrow Express, via the M4, via the Tube. But we agree with the Mayor of London on more than we disagree. We agree that aviation matters. We agree that a hub matters. We agree that you can only have one hub. He's right when he says if you had a new airport in the east of London, you'd have to shut Heathrow. He's right. So we agree with him on much more than we disagree. We have a different view on the right location. But let's see what the Commission says on that. We think there's a really strong argument that says Heathrow's in the right place. We'll see what the Airports Commission says about that in due course.
But it's not in the right place if, again, according to a former government Transport Minister, Justine Greening, who said that, well, we can't evade probability forever. Expanding Heathrow is just going to hasten the day we have some horrible plane crash on London with massive catastrophic loss of life.
Aviation is and has to be focused first and foremost on keeping everyone safe. That's what we do at the airport, that's what airlines does, and there's nothing that would cause an airline or us to do anything other than put that at the top of the list of things that we focus on.
Colin, let's throw it open to the floor now. I'm sure there are going to be some questions. If we could get a microphone.